All right, so there's some big topics on the table, and we have a key U.S. senator to discuss them. First, authorizing the war that the U.S. is already in against ISIS, and a related and controversial report on torture tactics that will be coming out tomorrow. So let's bring in Senator Tim Kaine. He's a Democrat from Virginia, serves on the Armed Services Committee, Foreign Relations Committee, and Budget Committee. You got it all covered, Senator, so you're the right man.
Great to be with you.
Welcome to New Day. It's good to have you on set.
Thanks so much.
So let's talk about this vote. You're holding hearings tomorrow. You're going to have the Secretary of State, John Kerry, there. The obvious pushback is, why have a hearing? Why not just vote already? Why isn't this happening? What's your take?
Well, look, it's shocking that we haven't had a vote. The president started this war against ISIL, and they call it a war against ISIL on the 8th of August, and we're now more than 4 months today, 4 months into this war. Congress hadn't had a debate or a vote. I filed an authorization resolution with an authorization but limitations in September, and have been trying to get a hearing on it. Finally, we're going to have the hearing this week. Senator Menendez, our chair, has pushed, and we are going to have a vote in the Foreign Relations Committee either Wednesday or Thursday on this authorization. So I'm glad that we're finally there. It shouldn't have taken this long.
Why did it take this long? You know, you have some of your brothers and sisters down there want to sue the president for pretty much every executive action he takes, and yet it seems that both sides of the aisle, you've given a pass to this president and others, to be honest, with the most dangerous power that the president holds.
And this is the most significant responsibility that Congress holds, is the power to declare war.
Right. It is your power under the Constitution.
Absolutely. But what's happened is the leadership in both parties, both houses, sent a message to the president beginning in June. You know, we would rather you do this without us having a vote right away. So I wrote an op-ed. June 25th was my first op-ed about this. President, do not start military action without Congress. And I have been really banging on this for months. We were told first, well, we should wait till midterms, and then we'll get right to it. Then the midterms are over. Well, we should wait till the new year, and we'll get to it. The fact of the matter is, a president should not be able to wage unilateral war without Congress weighing in. And
especially when they never seem to end anymore.
Well,
and you know the American people are fatigued. You know our fighting men and women are having trouble both there and when they come back home. They're brilliant in the field. But this is a real issue, and yet it's been skirted.
And it's the fighting men and women that makes me do this. I'm from Virginia. We're the most military state in the nation. Constitutionally, Congress is supposed to weigh in, but the real issue here is you shouldn't ask men and women to risk their lives. We've already had 3 deaths in Operation Inherent Resolve of troops. You shouldn't ask them to risk your lives unless Congress is willing to debate it and put their thumbprint on it and say, this is a national mission that is worth doing. Then you can ask people to risk your lives. But if we're not willing to have that debate, it's really immoral for us to send people into harm's way. So that's what this debate is about this week. The ISIL threat is a very real one. I support the president's mission, but I don't support the president, not really pushing Congress, and definitely Congress's abdication.
Can you blame
at this
him?
Point.
Why would you want to mess with Congress if you don't have to as the president?
Look,
it's so toxic down there. And what's the chance that this vote comes out and it winds up disapproving of the war and recalling any funding for it?
I think the chances of a disapproval are pretty low.
Right?
In fact, the president had the votes in September. I kind of did a rough head count on the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. It was probably a 2-to-1 vote. I wish we had done it then, but we need to do it now so that the men and women who are fighting every day, who are going to miss their holidays fighting this war thousands of miles away, they know that the political leadership has debated this and the American public's behind it.
All right, so now let's talk about what poses a risk to our fighting men and women abroad. I would submit that this report that's going to come out tomorrow may do that. And I'm taking my information from Chairman Mike Rogers. It's a torture report, basically, is what's coming out about what was done under the administration. The practices, if they were true and bad practices, are no longer done, supposedly, under the Obama administration.
That's correct. They have been stopped.
So why put out a report that would incite violence from your opponents, put men and women at risk, if they've already been stopped? What's the upside?
Chris, we're a democracy, and you're in the information business. I mean, we do feel, and I deeply believe, that things that are done in the American people's name, the American people ought to know about them. Now, this report about the torture interrogation techniques during the previous administration has been worked on for a number of years, including it's been worked on to redact or structure some of the reporting so that identities are not known. But I think it's important for the American people to know what was done in their name, because we need to guard against it happening in the future. So I do think there's effective protections in the language. I'm not on the Intel Committee. I haven't seen the report yet. But I know how hard they've worked to try to effectively inform without needlessly exposing people to risk.
You know the Bush administration is going to push back. They're going to say the CIA has hardworking men and women, and they do this for us, and it's what guarantees our safety, and that these methods led to that. Do you think that it's so easy to say to people, look what they did with this waterboarding? Nobody's going to like it, but isn't that pandering to the naivete of the uninitiated of people? Isn't war an ugly business? Isn't this the reality of what it takes sometimes?
I think we're going to learn through this. Look, there's two aspects that I think you'll see covered in the report. What information did we get because of detention? Nobody's arguing that we shouldn't have detained terrorists. We needed to detain them. What information did we get with respect to detention, and then what information did we get with respect to these enhanced interrogation torture techniques? And I think what you're going to find is the detention worked, the interrogation didn't, and what that means is for the future, we know what works and what doesn't, and that's what's important.
Does it concern you that many intelligence types say, either on background or off the record to the media, and probably to you as well, listen, I'm not a sadist. I don't want to hurt people. This works, what we do. That's why we do it. Does that discourage you in terms of wanting to expose these methods? Because, if you expose them, you wind up ending them. You're not going to have the American people say, waterboard, hooray. It's not going to happen.
Chris, the issue is, do they work? And that's what I think is going to be so important about this report. We're going to find out not only what was done, but more importantly, did they work? And if they don't work...
Not easy to quantify, though.
Well, but I have a feeling you're going to see this. If they don't work, and if you can get the information you need from detention, but you don't need the enhanced interrogation techniques, then that tells us what we ought to be doing going forward and what we should not do going forward.
Senator Tim Kaine,
Thanks,
it's great
Chris.
to have you on the set.
Absolutely.
We'll be watching these hearings. We'll be watching what happens with the report. We look forward to talking to you about it again.
Okay.